Hello fellow Scratchers! I've always wanted to create more engaging animated characters in my Scratch games, but that's never been easy. Until now. So yeah, over the holiday season I got COVID, which was not nice, but it did give me a little time to consider coding a new Scratch game, and to try out a fun tool for character animation called Spriter. Now it's by Brash Monkey, and yes, there's a free edition, and I'll tell you more about that soon. But the game, it's going to be a Griffpatch original, a puzzle platformer where the protagonist has to traverse each level with the aim of pushing together similarly coloured cubes. Very simple, but with a lot of cool potential. What would you say to tagging along to see how the game develops? Let me share my journey from character design to animation and show you how I began to build up this exciting new Scratch game. So I didn't really have a firm idea of what my game's player character was going to look like, so I turned to the flavour of the month, ChatGPT, for inspiration. Interestingly, it suggested a robot as the main protagonist. Now I hadn't thought of that and I liked it. And with a little more prompting, I got a very cool image. Not sure why this one has one eye, or where this poor guy's body went, but this one I love. So I took this design and I recreated it using mainly rectangles in a vector image editor. I used Illustrator for this purpose, but Inkscape or the Scratch editor would also suffice. The important thing is that the design is simple enough that it looks good both big and when shrunk right down teeny small, since that is how it will probably look in-game. Now that I had the finished design, I wanted to animate it, and usually this would be a real pain in the butt. But today I'm getting a helpful hand from Spriter. This bit of software by Brash Monkey is available as a free or a pro license, and you'll find a link to it under this video. This is the bundled example showing a fully rigged character assembled using bones and keyframe poses to produce a smooth, animated walk cycle. Very cool indeed. I was stoked to give it a try. You have to start by saving the individual parts, limbs, head, feet, etc. of the player character into a folder on your computer. This can then be opened as a new project within Spriter and reassembled as intended. So the next step is to add in a skeleton rig of bones to hold it all together, and define where the components can pivot and move. Finally, link the images to the bones, and the rig is complete. Now just a word of warning, do watch the Spriter tutorials before trying this out yourselves, as it was far from obvious how to go about this, even for me. Then it was a matter of trial and error, constantly referring back to Brash Monkey's example project, and after a relatively short time, my beautiful robot walk cycle emerged, and I have to say, it came out pretty sweet. So much so that I went ahead and created an idle animation too, for when they're standing still. I guess robots don't really breathe, but meh, it looks cool and helps bring the game to life. So it was super easy to export the animations, making them ready to be imported back into Scratch. It's just a shame that they had to be bitmap. I think the best compromise is to export twice as large as we need, and then shrink the sprites down to 50% in Scratch. And it seems to work best when the costumes are an even height and width. But man, a blank Scratch project is always a bit daunting. There's so much work involved in coding a game from Scratch. So why not reuse one of my tutorial projects? Episode 13 of my tile scrolling platformer, for example, would be a splendid starting point. It's tile-based, has great platforming scripts, and a built-in level editor, and encoding. So sure, it's a bit Mario-themed right now, but it doesn't take much to replace your players' costumes. Very exciting. And the level tile costumes too. Now I had to quickly knock up some bricks and a shiny red cube to be pushed around. Then scrap that annoying music, reconfigure a few Scratch lists, and then with the level editor working, I could mock up a quick level. Awesome. And here we go! Okay, no animation yet, just the basic standing frame, but it looks good. And the movement around the level is all there. The collision detection is almost right. I'll make sure to tidy that up shortly. But first, let's get the player animations working. I found the Paint Sprite script and added in both the idle animation for when speed X is 0 and otherwise we're walking, beginning at costume 12 and cycling through for the next 12 costumes. Let's see that in action. And there it is! All of my hard work finally paying off. And yes, vector art would have looked a bit smoother, but that bitmap 50% scaling trick does seem to be working pretty well. For you, what do you think of the look of this? Now let's fix the player height. A simple change to the player's height variable. There we go. But there is another problem. Head collisions are not pixel accurate, and I'm getting snagged on this block. After a little think, I realised it was due to how I checked for collisions at my head level by adding the height variable, which is actually half height. And that's fine for detecting feet collisions, but in a tile grid, this point represents the tile above the player. So I need to bring this down by a tiny amount, which we actually already are doing for the width. Oh. Excellent. Bug squashed. So the basic platforming had all fallen into place real fast. That is, assuming we actually want to move around like Mario. Well, actually, no. In my cubes game, the player character shouldn't be able to jump. What? So how do they get around? Well, when it comes to these cubes, I want the robot to be able to climb up over them. And for that, I will need Spriter once more to sketch out a fun climbing animation. I already had a cube of the correct size, which I could import. And that was the starting point. The next pose would have the player jumping up and grabbing the top of the cube. I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing, something like this perhaps? And of course, the final pose would have the player standing on top of the cube. Now, I just needed to create a realistic scrambling pose to fit in the gaps. Perhaps if the back leg could reach up next, along with the hands, and then with the hands on top, they could push the player back to their feet. Yeah, lots of back and forward tweaking, until finally I had something that looked like this. Now, you might think the animation looks a bit too fast and smooth, but don't forget that when played in game, this action will be repeated over and over, and if they climbed too slowly, then it will end up getting annoying. So this was my compromise. With the cube hidden, I can now export the frames, and the fun bit, import it into Scratch. A new player action, climb cube, animating the costume 24 and onwards. And for the time being, I'll replace the jumping code with a simple change to the climb cube action, starting at frame 0. So while climbing, all other player actions are disabled. We just play back the climbing animation. Half a frame at a time to keep it slow. And once it ends, I reset the action and let the game continue. And look at this! It plays back real nice. Now, obviously, we shouldn't be able to climb up into another block, and we shouldn't teleport back down to the floor afterwards. And we shouldn't be able to climb into thin air. But that's all fixable stuff, and this animation is looking sweet. Let's fix this teleporting issue. The climbing animation has our player climb up the block and end at the top. But in reality, this sprite hasn't moved, it's just an animation. So on finishing, we appear back at the starting point. To fix this, we must end by physically moving the player to match the end frame. I'll try changing X by 16, that's half a tile, and changing Y by 32, a whole tile up. Oh my gosh, that was a good guess. It's spot on. And man, it is fun running around climbing over blocks, and it's the player animations that really bring this to life. Oops! I need to account for the climbing left too. I can use that old direction divided by 90 trick. Very smooth. I wonder if this is getting you excited to try out some keyframe animations yourself. You know what, I'll pop a link to a studio under the video in case you manage to create anything with Spriter that you want to share. But perhaps I'll need to make you a dedicated tutorial first. Let me know in the comments. Well, that is very entertaining, but it's definitely not right. I need to enforce some ground rules. Climbing requires a solid block in front of the player, and that block must not have another solid block on top of it. I can use the old get tile at block, adjusting the X to look ahead of the player. That will confirm the block in front is solid, and then the block above we need to add 32 to their Y position, and confirm that the tile is not solid, not a hash. I can now climb up to the right, which is great, but not to the left. Hold on, let's try a larger offset. Sorted. It's nice that the level is starting to feel solid, and the animations make it all the more believable. Now I've left the best till last. The bread and butter of this puzzle platformer, I need an animation for the player pushing a cube across the floor. Now I thought I might be able to clone the original walk cycle and go from there, but after tilting them forward, I quickly realised that this caused too much of a change to the rest of the bones, so after getting the limbs in position, I scrapped the rest of the animation and began working at it fresh. It was helpful to keep referencing back to my previous walk animation. Now, I'm not saying Spriter does all the work for you, far from it, but the results are really very satisfying. I think this is pretty believable. Let's get it into Scratch. Here they are. Now I simply switch to display the push animation whenever the space key is held down. It looks a bit like they are sleep running. Is sleep running a thing? Anyhow, they're moving far too fast to really do the animation any justice. Hold on, I can fix that. There we go. Rather than switching to the idle animation when pushing against a solid wall, I now continue to play the pushing animation, just very slowly. And now we can really see every frame, and it's very smooth indeed. But I'm not quite done yet, as we can still do the push moonwalk. Oh, and if you are wondering why this second cube is no longer solid, well, I've begun the job of switching over to making the cubes enemy entity sprites of their own. And as such, they are no longer solid. Until, that is, I make them solid again. I know, so confusing. But I hope you'll tune in to the next episode, where I'll attempt to make these cubes pushable. Yeah, that's where the coding really starts to heat up. How many cubes can you push? What happens to cubes on top of other cubes? Do cubes fall when pushed off a ledge? And how do we get this all to work together? It sure is an exciting journey, and I can't wait to actually share this game with you, so watch out on my Griffpatch profile as I begin to share early alpha releases so that you can follow my progress. Thanks guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, checking the bell icon so as to be alerted the moment the next video drops. In the meantime, have a great week ahead and scratch on, guys.